Started. That's okay. Oh, I think we got it. Okay. Hi, thank you guys so much for coming. We're each going to give presentations, but we're hoping for it to turn into more of a discussion because I'm sure a lot of you have thoughts and input and ideas on this massive topic of animal agriculture and climate change. So my name is Caroline Wimberly. I work for an NGO based in New York called Brighter Green. And this is Tozie Zofuka, who's based in South Africa, and he is representing Humane Society International. He's also the chairperson of the Pan-African Animal Welfare Alliance. So we're happy to have him here. And we have the fabulous Simone Lovera, they're both fabulous, the executive director of Global Forest Coalition. So we're very happy to have them here. And we're going to be joined by another fabulous person, Amal Bekri from Morocco shortly, but I think she's on her way here. So it'll be a little impromptu. So thank you so much for coming. We're all gonna talk about some different aspects of animal agriculture and why it's so important to discussions on climate change specifically. So I'll get started. Okay, so just a little bit about Brighter Green. We're a nonprofit action tank working to work locally and internationally to bring attention to mainly the issue of the industrialization of animal agriculture and the effects for public health, for rights, for livelihood, for equity, the environment, pollution, biodiversity, as well as the animals themselves. So the main body of our work are 4 policy papers with a case study on 4 emerging economies, although arguably 2 or 3 of them are quite emerged at this point, India, China, Brazil, and Ethiopia. And we really dive into the agricultural systems in place and how it's rapidly following the US and Western Europe model of intensification and what that means in these countries for the people, for the animals, for water use. Industrialized agriculture, as I'm sure everyone knows here, is a huge, takes massive amounts of water and energy inputs, and most of those are fossil fuel based. So we're looking at that issue mainly, but with some nuanced looks also. Okay, so here are some, it's very important for us to partner. That's also how we think we're most effective. So here's some of the different organizations, including PAAWA, HSI, Global Forest Coalition that we've worked with. Very important for us to partner with different countries that we're talking about. So why animal agriculture? Why is this an issue? Why is it relevant here? So as I mentioned, and I think Tozie might talk a little bit about numbers, but huge inputs of natural resources, water, energy, land. So the scale is very, we try to get it talked about more, have it be more on the agenda at the COP because of just the scale and where it's going. For food security and hunger, you know, all of this land that's being used to grow animal feed could very well be used to grow food directly for people. So it's a question of equity and access and who, you know, who are we really raising food for? Public health, certainly animal-based products, as we found in industrialized countries, are huge causes of heart disease, of cancer, of all sorts of negative effects that have been well documented. Animal welfare and rights, we don't shy away from that. We do focus more on the welfare, but definitely very important to us. Species and biodiversity loss. Industrialized livestock, #1 cause of biodiversity loss and species loss. It's crazy, mostly through deforestation, which Simone will talk about. Livelihoods, so who's being put out of work to create these industrialized systems? So many smallholder farms, a lot of women operations, equity, sustainability. Could go on and on. So those are the covers of our 4 policy papers. There's more information in our booth at 22A. All of these are available on our website with an accompanying policy brief and video. Really interesting stuff. And materials in the native language also. Okay, so from that, just very quickly, from that, those case studies, we wanted to do a little bit more on the ground, real time review of what this looks like in these countries. We wanted to do all 4 countries, but due to budget, we picked China, and we met up with a fabulous Chinese filmmaker, Zhen Yi, and he led an all-Chinese team and did the first documentary on meat consumption in China called What's for Dinner. And we've done small screenings across China. It's screened in different film festivals. It's really interesting to see because we got a lot of access to these small farms. And he's actually made a follow-up film that we're just in the process of releasing called 6 Years On, where he went back to some of the places he'd filmed. And it's very interesting to see how people have changed in just 6 years. One woman who was very into, she was a pig farmer for years, and she was very much into meat and health, and now she says her doctor said she needs to cut back all meat. So that was like a complete 180. But now it's been recommended to her by her doctor to drink more dairy. So we find it fascinating that the 70-year-old woman, her doctor is saying, you know, load up on dairy. So that's a whole nother kind of interesting aspect. So if you want more information about that, you can go to our website, talk to me after. It's really interesting what we're doing in China. We have a lot of projects going on right now at a grassroots level to get more people engaged in what we call good food, sourcing food, knowing where your food comes from. Food safety is probably the #1 food issue I would say most Chinese are concerned about. So we're definitely following up on that. Health, and bringing animal welfare into the conversation, believe it or not. There are a lot of very passionate animal activists in China. So this is the website. I'll skip through these. These are a couple of our other publications on industrialized dairy, because it's not just meat, it's dairy and eggs that are the source of tons and tons of pollution and greenhouse gas emissions. This is a discussion paper written by our associate Wanqing Zhou, and she released it at COP21 in Paris. And it's a fascinating paper of the relationship between China, Brazil, and the United States, and kind of how the US model got exported and, you know, intensified the operations in Brazil and in China. It's very interesting, so you should check that out. Okay, so by a little bit of numbers for you, about it's hard to know exactly, but about 70 billion animals used in the food system. I know the average American, you know, we're the biggest consumers for sure. So 104 kilograms of meat a year, including fish. And then I know that's kind of a misleading rest of the world. I know it's very broad, the rest of the world. That includes like Western Europe, 34 kilograms, but rapidly increasing. And the industry is certainly seeking, they find the US and Western European markets pretty sated in terms of meat consumption. So especially with dairy, the new markets for finding dairy, consumers of dairy in typically lactose intolerant countries. That we talk about that in the dairy paper earlier. It's very, very interesting. So meat and dairy, here's where this really comes into the climate change discussion. Uses 30% of the lands of the Earth's surface and 70% of the arable land. That's just massive. And in Brighter Green's opinion, it's not used terribly effectively to feed people. So this is from the Meat Atlas that came out a couple of years ago by the Heinrich Böll Foundation. This just shows you in some industrialized countries what the different levels of consumption are. And if you haven't seen it, I really encourage you to look at this. It's a great report. And then it shows some developing countries. You got South Africa, which Tozie will talk about. Just look at those skyrocketing numbers. It's pretty amazing. And with China, our main interest is pigs, because pork is the most consumed meat in China. China actually consumes half of the world's pigs, which is interesting. So here are the trend lines from the, oh, it cut off at the bottom, sorry. Trend lines from the Hungry Bowl Foundation. You know, we see that pork line is really driven by China. And you see poultry going way up and even beef, red meat going up. So this is what we're looking at. We're looking at more consumption and how do we feed all the, you know, this demand. So this is what it looks like. So this is a feedlot, and I believe it's California. So much pollution, animals just, you know, hang around their own filth. And certainly not all, especially in developing countries, obviously it's not looking like this at this point, but this is the model and this is where it's heading. And I did want to include statistics on Morocco since we are in Marrakesh. And this is from the FAO stat. And these are the consumption levels, including fish, for Moroccans. And you can see in the last, oh gosh, what was that, 2006 on? It's really, really amping up. So even here, you've got to increase demand for sure. Here's more of what it looks like. Here's like egg-laying hens, battery cages, which actually this photo actually makes it look very bright. It's not, it's completely dark in there. Here's the poultry. Just so when you, I mean, I'm sure this is common sense. When you house animals like this, in the US and in West, we jack them up with antibiotics so that they don't get sick, because this is so, I mean, if you had a bunch of people packed in like this, we'd all be spreading diseases too. And I think there was a study by the World Health Organization that 70% of oh gosh, what is it? It's foodborne illnesses in the last like 10 years are sourced from animal products. So, you know, there's something wrong with how we're raising them for sure. And these are poor gestation. These are some pigs in the US system. And this is really interesting. Okay, so this is very recent. We had our colleague Jenny that I mentioned visit the US a month ago, and he traveled all around and wanted to see different kind of operations, from, you know, good, sustainable, rotational, integrated livestock operations to veganic operations, completely removing animals from the equation, to factory farms. He wanted to see everything to inform our work in China. And so we got the opportunity to go to North Carolina right after Hurricane Matthew hit. So if you aren't familiar, North Carolina is a state in the southeastern part of the United States, and is the second biggest state for pork production. So there's tons and tons of pigs. And so they had this hurricane, it was massive flooding, and we were able to go up with this gentleman down here who's like kind of, it looks like he's very upset, but he's just like scratching his eyes, named Rick Dove, who's photographed these factory farms from above for like 25 years and is an amazing water advocate and advocate for communities. Oh, there's Amal, bonjour. She must make an entrance.
That wasn't the purpose.
So these are we were able to go up in the plane with him and see the flooding and see these lagoons. I believe in the top right, those are poultry facilities, so you don't have the big lagoons. But over here on the left, you have intensive hog production sheds, and as you can see, complete, you know, inundation of the lagoons. And it's fascinating. What we were concerned with was, okay, well, who's cleaning up? Who's in charge of all the dead animals? There are millions of dead animals, thousands of, well, probably, yeah, thousands of hogs, millions of birds that drowned. And there's very little information available about who's cleaning up, who's paying for the cleanup. And what's most interesting to us is that most of these hog facilities are owned by WH Group, the company that bought Smithfield. So it's this very interesting situation of a Chinese company, you know, owning these animals in these facilities, but yet the North Carolina taxpayer and probably federal US citizens will be paying for the cleanup. There's no commercial, you know, responsibility to pay for that cleanup. It's insane. The amount of pollution, I can't even tell you, it was heartbreaking. And just for people, obviously, not to mention that there are millions of drowned animals in there. Okay, so about a quarter of greenhouse gases, this is an IPCC study using 2010 data, says that agriculture and changes in land use related to crops and farmed animals, almost a quarter of all anthropogenic greenhouse gases. That's a massive, massive amount. And this is why we feel this needs to be addressed. So this is interesting. This is the global cereals and soybeans grown. This is a 2012 study, as it says, using 2008 data. And look at that, over 80% of soybeans raised in the world go to feed farm animals. I mean, that's, to me, that kind of blows my mind. A little over 40% of cereals, even 60% of maize. Like that's just, yeah. Our argument would be that that is better, those acres would be better used to grow a diversity of crops for people directly. Okay, so relevant to the Paris Agreement. So if it keeps on this track, this by 2050, you know, we're going to double production. They anticipate, because the demand will be doubled for meat. Then agriculture alone is going to create 20 gigatons of CO2, just alone, that sector, not including anything else. So, and the Paris Accord, or for the 2 degrees Celsius, we can't have more than 23 gigatons. So we're leaving so as you see, we see some problems with the trajectory of where things are going. So here, you know, here are our ideas. Here's what we want to do to go forward. We want to engage. We really want to implement policy change. We find that to be so important as we are a public policy organization. So we want to connect with other groups, doing things on food, hunger, deforestation, work with Global Forest Coalition, on livestock and deforestation, and really get on both the demand side and the supply side. And in that light, on the supply side, there are some very interesting meat analogs. Both of these, I'm almost positive, are non-GMO, non-soy. And really interesting US-based startups creating eggs completely from plants. And as you can see, they have Beyond Meat, this company in California. Well, they're both in California. Of course, has these chicken strips, and they also have these beef crumbles. And there are organizations like the Good Food Institute trying to bring, to channel money towards plant-based startups, but also to bring policy attention to issues of animal agriculture. Okay, so that's all I have for now. There's my info. And Tozie, you want to go next? Yeah, sure. Oh, you know, okay, thanks. Yes, I will put yours up. Oh, and here's the. Just. Yeah.
Morning, everyone. As Caroline have said, my name is Tozie Zofuka. I'm coming from Cape Town, South Africa, and it's definitely good to be here. I've learned a lot of things, and I think many of you have done so as well. But last night, there was one thing I learned about myself when I attended the climate show, or the climate change show, is that I'm definitely getting older and older each year, because I couldn't dance. Normally I dance up until 2 a.m., but last night I couldn't reach 12 o'clock, which is it's a sign of a clock ticking. It's good, in fact, to learn a personal sort of aspect of things in this journey. Humane Society International, I just want to talk about the story of South Africa first, and maybe Cape Town per se. It's not really facts, but facts concerning South Africa and maybe some other countries on the African continent. Humane Society International is one of the largest animal welfare organization in the world, if I can call it that. We work with all the animals, but specifically then we'll be looking at the impact of animal agriculture into climate change. This is one of the campaigns that we are running specifically in South Africa, how these pigs are reared and how they are kept. But the good thing is that by 2020, the South African Pork Producers Organization has made an agreement to move away from this system and employ group housing systems. And then, of course, Caroline has shared some chicken pictures with us. But we've launched a campaign called Green Monday. And there's one thing that we do not do, especially I've seen it in this COP as well. We don't talk about sustainable diets when you talk about climate change. And that's I believe that we are missing a point. It could be that it's because what you eat is personal and you do not really want to judge people and tell them you are doing wrong. But I've been wanting to go around buying food, and I was wondering, what is the climate impact of this packet food that I'm buying? You know, what is it packaged first? How long did it travel? What was the impact of the egg itself that is in my plate? And I'm not sure if we can't do this at policy level, definitely at home, we won't be doing it, because we need leaders who need to be leading us to say that, look, it's not only the car that you drive that has an impact, but the food that you eat as well surely has an impact on the environment. So that's why we've launched Green Monday in South Africa. Many of you might be aware of Meatless Monday or Meat-Free Monday, but we thought that Green Monday is politically correct, whereby you would say, because you've taken a shower on a Monday, or you think of taking a shower on a Monday and not a bath to save water, because you want to do carpooling and drive a car with 5 of your colleagues or friends or students, instead of driving alone in a V8 Jeep Grand Cherokee, take a train or take a bus. Whilst you're taking a bus and waking up with the shower, and maybe in your tea or coffee, substitute cow's milk with soya milk. Then in your plate during breakfast and lunch and also dinner, substitute your burger with a plant-based burger or soya burger. Then that will definitely reduce your environmental impact. Because as Caroline has said, animal agriculture is one of the major contributors to the negative impact on the environment. But it starts with our plates. During lunchtime today, what will be on our plate and what impact did that particular food had on the environment? And of course, we do it for health and also for animals, but we are gathered here to really listen about the impact of animal agriculture. This is coming from the United Nations Food and Agricultural Organizations. And it shows that agriculture indeed is one of the negative contributors onto the environment. I mean, it takes, depending on which study you quote, it takes between 15,000 and 20,000 liters of water to produce 1 kilogram of beef. And then when it comes to chicken, it takes roughly 4,000 liters to produce 1 kilogram of chicken. So if we are calling ourselves environmentalists, what kind of food are we eating? Where are our clothes? Where are our jeans coming from? Who manufactured them? And then what distances did they travel before they reached our wardrobes? %29% of the water is required globally. In South Africa, those who are coming from the southern part or who are watching the news, you would have seen a flash flood a couple of days ago. Again, the city of Johannesburg has introduced some restrictions when it comes to water. You are not allowed to water your garden, for example, between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. You are also not allowed to use a hose when you're washing your car. Where I'm from in Cape Town, we are also introducing level 3 restrictions, meaning the same will apply for Cape Town as well. And that has just happened recently, 2 weeks, just a week before we came to Morocco. So it means that we are already experiencing some water scarcity, whereby stats is saying that by 2023, 2030, will be 60% of us will be experiencing water scarcity in the major. But in South Africa, I want to share that we are already experiencing such water scarcity. In fact, the government has now introduced these restrictions. Even the United Nations Environmental Program is calling for 1 vegetarian day a week. And hence we've adopted Green Monday. And that day to us, we've specifically chosen Monday because South Africans love their meat. In fact, they consume about 43 kilograms of meat per person per year. I saw Caroline's average stats for global stats is about 34. South Africa is 48. And here in Morocco, I've recently learned that it's about 37 kilograms per person per year. And maybe before questions, I also like to share that the 1.2 billion animals that we slaughter in South Africa, 1 billion of them are chickens, and roughly 2 million cattle, 2 million or 3 million sheep, 1 million pork products as well. That's excluding your fish and all the seafood. Thank you very much for listening.
Yes, just thank you, everybody. I'm very honored to be here and representing a Moroccan NGO. The RAPAD Morocco has been created a year ago because we understood that, unfortunately, small associations here in Morocco are not taken very seriously. Some of them are very, very involved and work in each other's field. So the RAPAD Morocco is issuing every question of animals. It can be conservation, it can be farm animals, it can be dogs population, domestic animals, and so on. So